I can't even imagine. Have you heard those words and thought, neither can I? But then, it happened. Life took a turn you weren't expecting, and somehow you kept going. You are not alone. Your story matters, and we're here to talk about it. We're two moms, lifelong best friends, and we know what it's like when life throws the unexpected our way. Here we share real stories of struggle, strength, and hope. Because through every challenge, a new path unfolds, and where hardship meets strength, purpose is found.
Welcome to episode 24 of I Can't Even Imagine. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Stephanie.
Today we are diving into something we all wrestle with, relationships. We're joined by Danielle Sethi, a Florida-based marriage and family therapist whose journey took her from the hustle of New York finance to the heart of healing through therapy. Danielle opens up about how the pandemic became a turning point in her life, leading her to reevaluate what really mattered, and that shift eventually brought her to the work she does today. In this episode, we explore attachment theory, emotionally focused therapy, and how the patterns we pick up in early life continue to shape how we love, argue, connect, and sometimes disconnect. We also talk about trauma loops, the emotional landmines we unknowingly carry, and what it really takes to break generational cycles, especially as parents trying to raise emotionally healthy kids while healing ourselves. If you've ever felt stuck in your relationships, unsure why you react the way you do, or you're just trying to show up better for yourself and the people you love, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Welcome, Danielle. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yes. So I am a therapist in Florida. My focus is relationship therapy. So my academic background is in marriage and family therapy. Basically, what that means is it's more of a systemic model of therapy. So rather than looking at just symptoms, what's wrong, what's going on, it's actually kind of zooming out and looking at the context. So why does this happen? How could these symptoms make sense in the broader context? And then taking all that into account when we figure out what the best mode of treatment would be for that. So it's kind of my educational background kind of led me to some specific models, modalities of therapy. But before that, I actually worked in the finance industry. I was living in New York for about 6 years doing that. And then kind of uprooted my life during the pandemic because things were not working out so well being in New York and quarantined and all of that. So that kind of led me to coming down here, going back to school and kind of entering this sort of different career realm.
So would you say that there was any kind of catalyst that led you into this career path?
Yes. Well, my undergrad degree is in psychology, and I always wanted to go back for some career in psychology. I was really unclear about what that was when I was 21 and graduating college, and I knew that investing in more education when I had no idea what I wanted to do didn't really make sense. So I took a job and then kind of got comfortable there for a little bit longer than I planned. But then the pandemic was actually a really good time to kind of just pause and evaluate everything a little bit more broadly and really make sure I was working towards those goals. So it was a longer term goal. It sounds random when I say I went from finance to this, but it was actually sort of part of my plan for a long time.
And I think the pandemic did that for a lot of people. It allowed them that time to kind of like reevaluate their life choices, I suppose, or like what am I doing that is meaningful to this world? Because when you all of a sudden have to be quarantined or at home, you start to reevaluate what you're doing with your everyday life.
Totally. Yeah. And because for me, what it did too is I was in New York, I was working in this big fancy office, all these people, and the pandemic kind of stripped all of that away. So all that was left was me and my laptop and my job. And with all of the other things gone, I realized that what I was doing and the purpose of what I was doing just wasn't fulfilling me anymore. And so it was a really good time to just kind of make a change.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you like what you do?
I love what I do. Yes, I love working with clients. I feel like I've learned so much more in my since graduation, working with clients full time than I even did in school, because it's just so much, you learn so much more working with people than you can learn, in the books, in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So yes, I love it. It's got its challenges, but I've also kind of learned really how to take good care of myself, because I'm kind of showing up with people and holding emotions and talking about difficult things. And so I've also learned how those things impact me and what I need to do to keep myself feeling healthy and like I can keep showing up each day. So I feel like I know myself a lot better than I did back then.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my therapist about something similar to this, because she's going through some health stuff right now. And before I left the other day, I was like, you have a therapist, right? Because
oh, yes.
This is super heavy for her, not only taking on everybody else's problems and helping them navigate through those, but then going through her own at the same time. And she's like, of course I do. So that was good to hear.
I know. I think most of us do have like that broader support. I have my therapist. I have my supervisor who helps me kind of from the clinical side, how making sure I'm best supporting my clients. So it definitely takes a village, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than just the one-on-one that you see in the room. The support like really branches out from that.
Yeah.
When
That's awesome.
You're taking on so much, people, it's trauma dumping. I mean, that's what you're there for. You take on other people's, stories. I can imagine like what that does to you if you're not using your village, if you're not, if the therapist isn't also getting therapy, like what that can do to somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us a little more about your therapy styles.
The therapy style that I really have gravitated to the most, I learned when I was in grad school, is called emotionally focused therapy. And it blends together some other models of therapy, one of them being attachment theory. And it kind of takes this relational view on how relationships are important to our individual healing. So kind of to that point earlier about how what someone's doing might not make sense if you're just looking at one person and the behaviors they're doing or the way that they deal with stress. But if you kind of zoom out and look at the ways that other people in their life respond to them, you can kind of make sense of how they get stuck, how it kind of actually creates a feedback loop between two people, especially partners or parent-child. So kind of having that understanding of how different people's behaviors are reinforcing each other. And then on the individual level, how those behaviors impact our thoughts, our emotions, maybe touch on unhealed parts of us. So kind of mapping all of that out, either with an individual. I do a lot of work with couples too. And then kind of helping them understand what is the more vulnerable part of this underneath, and how can we communicate with each other in a different way so we're not maybe reacting to anger and yelling or blaming or defending, but we're instead kind of tapping into what's the more vulnerable thing under that. Anger is a protective emotion. So usually if you're feeling anger, you're also feeling something else, even if you're not consciously aware of it. So kind of just helping people get a little bit more in tune with who they are and kind of be able to communicate more clearly, send clearer signals to the people in their world so that they can actually get their needs met.
If you were to define just kind of summarize the definition of attachment theory, could you explain that a little bit?
Totally. So attachment theory was originally, this kind of body of work was originally applied to children and parents-child relationships. The idea that we are all, as humans, we're inherently dependent on other people. So as humans, we depend on people, we depend on our caregivers longer than any other animal. Like 18 years is so much longer than any other animal in the grand scheme of our lifespan. And so this idea that because we're so dependent on our caregivers for survival, like our parents when we're really young have to feed us and shelter us and clothe us and all of these things. And so if we get disconnected from them, it brings up this primal panic, this fear of abandonment, of being rejected from those people who our survival depends on. And so that's kind of why that bond means so much. That's why staying connected to caregivers is so important. And that's why getting disconnected from those people is so inherently stressful, can even be traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
So moving through that, the idea of within attachment theory, there's different attachment styles. And those attachment styles are essentially ways that different people deal with that disconnection, getting disconnected from that caregiver. And it turns out there's really not that many ways to deal with stress in relationships. You either go towards it or you go away from it. So what people call the anxious attachment is kind of that going towards it, that hyper activating, whether like that's really expressing the emotions, that's feeling that panic, that anxiety. That typically happens if you look back to childhood, kids who maybe had inconsistent caregiving, unpredictable, and then they kind of become more anxious, trying to find that predictability in their caregivers. And then on the other side of that is the avoidant or kind of deactivating, hypoactivating. So the ways that those people deal with the disconnection is actually trying to not even feel the stress in themselves, trying to act like it's not there, trying to numb the feelings away, trying to not have to depend on the other person anymore so that it's not so painful when they can't reach them.
That's me.
Well, that's what I like. The reason that I fell in love with this model is because there's so many things that we think of as personality that are really just the ways that we've learned how to handle stress based on the ways that our caregivers have responded to us, based on the way that other partners have responded to us. And again, these are in really important, critical, close, intimate relationships. And I never really identified with there's like Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and all these other personality assessment tools. And I always found myself to be someone that I'm really different around different people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this model really resonated with me because I'm super anxious, like with my husband, but I'm pretty avoidant when it comes to my parents.
Right.
And so you can kind of use these different strategies in different ways. It's not who you are. They're just these things that you're doing to try to get your needs met.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people talk about their different like attachment style and things like that. So that's why when we had done our pre-interview together, this was a subject that I was really excited to kind of delve into because I don't know anything about it other than people telling me their attachment style.
Yeah. Well, let me also just before we move, I'll tell you kind of the secure or healthy, because those are sort of on the insecure side. So
Mhm.
if you aren't getting your needs met by your parents, and needs met, I mean, you're not able to connect with them emotionally when you need them.
Mhm.
The emotional channel is sort of the means to getting all the other needs met. So if a kid is hungry and they have this biological need of food, the crying, it's the signal to the caregiver to kind of get that other need met. So on the healthy side is the secure attachment, where you know that this person, whether it's your caregiver or your partner as an adult, is accessible to you. When you do access them, they'll be responsive to you, and that their response is emotionally engaged. So they're not just kind of saying words, but they're really with you in whatever you have going on. And so in the absence of that secure connection, communication in childhood is when some of these other strategies might kind of pop up.
Now, are there ways to get people to like recognize their current attachment style and try to get more to that secure place? Like, obviously, there probably are strategies to get you there.
Yeah. So knowing, kind of identifying some of these patterns is such a huge step because most of us don't know why we're doing that. So, like, I mean, even early on in my relationship with my now husband, I was a very, very anxious person of like, if he didn't message me back fast enough, I would get really panicky, texting him again, calling again, where is he? But there was no awareness of this is an anxious pattern. This might not be about him. This might come from something from my past. So even just kind of noticing what you're doing when you feel that threat of disconnection is such a huge first step. I actually have a free quiz on my website that kind of goes through some different questions to help you identify what you're doing in these moments of disconnection to kind of help you understand what bucket you might like typically fall into. Again, these aren't personality traits. They're movable, they're changeable, but just kind of what might be happening the most in your life right now. And if you can kind of understand where that comes from, a lot of that is work in therapy, a therapist kind of helping you sit with the emotions that come up, that anxiety, that panic, figure out maybe what early experiences those relate to and work through healing some of that, either individually or with the partner that you're with.
Yeah, that's something I want to read more into. I like that.
It's huge.
Yeah. Just identifying it. I'm avoidant in a lot of my relationships that aren't necessarily very close, but then there's certain relationships where I feel like I'm super secure in them, like my husband or Stephanie here. And I don't know if this has anything to do with attachment, but people that I need, for example, my employees or clients or things like that, I am much more like tiptoey. I'll do whatever they need me to do to make sure they stay because I need them. Versus people like my husband or my best friend, they've loved me through all phases of my crazy and they're still here and I have security there so I can just be myself, tell you what I think with, in a hopefully a kind way without fear that they're going to like abandon me or something.
Yeah.
So there's different facets of my personality for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point. I was just taking a few notes before this and I wrote down that I would imagine you guys are that with each other. Like you have your attachment figures for each other, having known each other since childhood, gone through so many things together. And that's a really different relationship to your point, Victoria, about like sometimes we do need these strategies if we are with people that we don't have this really secure, vulnerable relationship with, like someone that you work with. Maybe you do have to like be avoidant and not show yourself fully all the time. Maybe that makes sense in some of those contexts, which again is why the context always matters. We don't just tell people blank slate, you need to be more vulnerable all the time, because I don't think that's true. I think you should be vulnerable with the people that it's safe to be vulnerable, that aren't going to reject you when you do that. And so not that those are bad, just that I'm sure you kind of maybe being avoidant or tiptoeing around with Stephanie would feel really different from with people that work with you. Like It totally depends on.
Yeah, I would be like, that's a red flag. What the hell's going on?
Right. I'm sure there's
you
certain things, I wouldn't want to hurt your feelings. So I kind of find a way to say something kindly. I'm not just going to like be outwardly that rude to you.
Just a little.
Just a little.
I can take. I'm used to your abuse.
That's the thing. It's like the people with thick skin, I can be myself. Yeah. But the people I know are very touchy. That's hard to do. I become very avoidant.
It's kind of hard to navigate. It's kind of hard to figure out how to be like emotionally true and honest with people. And so imagine how hard it is as a child when you're kind of trying to, your needs, like being connected to them matters so much more because you still depend on them, but sort of realizing, wait, maybe their needs actually matter more. Maybe I have to make sure that they're good and they're okay before I can express what I need or ask for something. And all of these things have big impacts on the relationships that we get into later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did notice that there was a big pattern, in the way that I let boyfriends and things kind of treat me based off of how I was kind of taught to respond to people's needs, or just not saying no. And I actually really wanted to say no in certain situations with people I'd met. And people pleaser kind of brought out the people pleaser in me a lot. And it's now almost 40 and looking back and kind of looking at that and being like, dang, what did I do? Why did I do that? But that's kind of how I was taught to respond to people, for a long time.
Totally. I mean, we learn from what is modeled from what we feel in those dynamics. It's not like we're thinking about that. We're consciously making these decisions that maybe on the outside don't look good, or we look back and we're like, why would I have done that? But it's because it's a totally different part of our brain that's there we're feeling, we're being in it based on what things felt like in our early dynamics. We're not like thinking about it,
Right.
the cognitive part of our brain. Yeah.
I know.
Does this have anything to do with trauma loops? Because I know you mentioned that with the pre-interview with Victoria, and I'm not entirely sure what a trauma loop is. Can you explain what that is?
So what I mean when I say a trauma loop is sometimes these moments, a lot of people have relational trauma in their history without even realizing it. When these moments of having a vulnerable need and either not being able to reach your caregiver or feeling rejected by them, if there's other things that, even if your parents had good intentions, like even if maybe you had a sibling that had more needs than you, or they had a job or whatever else, but those kind of moments accumulating over time can be traumatic on a little body, a child's body. And so when I say a trauma loop, sometimes the way that our brain stores that information is kind of combining the way that it feels in that moment with some aspect of what we saw or what we picked up from the environment. And then what we learn to believe about ourselves and the world. So these attachment styles typically have beliefs about them, whether we can trust others or whether we can trust ourselves. So anxious attachment people usually fall on the side of, I'll be okay if I can reach other people, but it's hard for me to trust myself to keep myself okay. Where avoidant more fall to the side of, I'll be okay myself, but I can't rely on anyone else. So I'll just make sure that I'm okay. So the way that trauma gets stored is it kind of combines all of those things. So if as an adult, we experience something in a relationship that feels similar to a dynamic that we experienced when we were young, it can kind of bring those emotions back in, that sense of getting rejected, that threat of disconnection, how intense that felt as a kid because our well-being depended on staying connected to the parent. Can actually feel that in the adult relationship, even though it may not actually hold that same meaning in the present. Maybe we don't actually depend on our partner for our survival in the same way that we did as a kid. But because the way that those traumatic memories get stored, it can feel like it in that moment. And so those things that we see that might feel similar can bring back those feelings and thoughts. And then we're kind of responding to the past and not the present situation.
So that reminds me, actually, I have something personal that I can share. This, from what your explanation is, I think it's a trauma loop. So my oldest son is a cancer survivor, and one of the things that I've had to deal with in processing the trauma that we went through as a family is that at that time I had a newborn. I also had a 2-year-old, and my newborn was born 2 weeks after my son was diagnosed. So majority of the appointments, because we're constantly at the hospital. I mean, this was like every couple weeks, just so many procedures over 2 years. But my husband was the one that took him to the majority of the appointments. And I was always very guilty. I always felt like I'm his mother. I should have been the one to be there. I should be in the room. I should be holding his hand. Like I did not like being home with the other 2 kids because I felt like I just needed to be with him. And, I've had to go through that guilt. Well, recently, my same son, who's, doing great and he's thriving. He's 12 years old now. He was diagnosed when he was 4. So it's been a long time. And he recently was in a accident on his brand new electric scooter and he broke his wrist. So when he fell and, nobody was there to witness it except for my daughter, and she comes running and saying that he's hurt. I was actually trying to leave the house. I was going out the door. I literally had my mascara in my hand. I'm running down the road barefoot, trying to figure out what happened, where he got launched off of his scooter. He's bloody everywhere, bloody on his side. His knee is all scraped up. Didn't even know that he had broke his wrist at the time, but he couldn't even hold his hand. Or he was holding his hand. He couldn't put it down. He was babying it, so I knew something was really wrong. And so when my husband comes out and he's like, you're getting ready for work, get back in the house, I'll take care of him. Of course, I'm like, no, I'm Mama Bear. I'm going after him. And we get him into the house, try to get him cleaned up. I'm lashing out at my husband. I'm treating him like he's completely incompetent. He can't handle the situation. I'm going and getting all the first aid stuff and bringing it to him and telling him what to do. And, eventually I do get out of the house. And the next day, my husband's like, I really don't appreciate the way that you were treating me in that moment when we were taking care of our son. And like, it finally clicked where I was like, oh my gosh, like I was projecting my guilt from years ago because I was leaving. I couldn't be there for him. It was that guilt that was coming up again because I wasn't able to be there for him when he was going to the hospital. It was always my husband. And that part of me is like almost a little like, I hate to say the word, but envious that I feel like my son has a closer relationship with his dad. As blessed as I am that they have a great relationship, part of me also kind of wants that same closeness.
First of all, thank you for sharing that here. This, as you're talking about that, it's kind of bringing up this other thing that we tend to do with these traumatic experiences where, well, I'm using the word redemption. So if we had this moment that we felt that guilt or pain and we see like another, whether it's like a relationship, another person, or an event like this where your son falls and is in need again, I almost wonder if there's this part of you like that guilt that you felt, it could almost be another opportunity to kind of reverse that, to kind of have a different experience where you're there to kind of relieve that part of you that holds some of that guilt for that. And then your husband getting like directly in the way of it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so then it feels in the moment like they're the problem. Like, why are you getting in the way of me having this moment with him? Where it may actually be about other things too. These other parts of you that have been impacted by some of the trauma of your family story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm glad you recognize that because there's certain times in my life that I will be yelling at my husband because I feel like he's completely incompetent to do something that he takes care of all the time. And for whatever reason in that moment that I'm there to take care of a situation, now I all of a sudden know more. And what? Like, why do I do this? But I don't connect those dots. So good job.
Thank you. I was proud of myself too. And one of my good friends that I told about that moment had said the same thing. And I was like, I guess it is kind of a big deal that I recognized it because I guess I don't normally.
Yeah.
That means I'm making progress. So that's good.
Yeah. And these things, they like trauma and the emotions attached to them in the body, they move so fast. It's like you see your son, like moving towards him, your husband, like there's so much happening so quickly. And especially when you're talking about your child being injured, like there's an urgency to this situation. There's not time in the moment always to slow down and think, I wonder what wounds might be coming up for me in this moment. Like, no, your child like needs to go to hospital or whatever. Like you have to figure it out. But after the fact, you can kind of sit with that and talk about it. And it's hard. It's hard to get in touch with these things.
It is. I mean, I went in the back. My son was actually home from school the next day because we were trying to figure out, the impact of his injury. And he was very shooken up. He was still extremely sore everywhere. So I said, you can stay home from school. And when I had that conversation with my husband, my son was in the other room and he was at work. My husband was at work. So we were doing this through text and I had to walk away and I had to go hide in my bathroom and I just sobbed and I just like let it all out. And I was like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Like I did not expect that. It hit me like a brick wall.
Yeah.
There's
usually always like this really important pain messages underneath that can kind of get lost when we're trying to move really quickly. And so like slowing that down, sitting with that, letting yourself feel that. I find that often after that, like after a really good cry, I'm like, oh, that's what I was upset about. Like it's more clear. It makes more sense once you kind of let the emotions process through you. And then you can, share and talk about it. But it's hard.
I feel like I can see other people's, maybe not what's bothering them for real, but the fact that something else is bothering them. They're freaking out about this or upset about that something obviously is really bothering them and trying to help them navigate and figure out what that is. I don't do the same thing for myself. I don't know how to see that and don't really have a lot of time to try. So I just let it go. I do my, have my emotion and then move on.
Which kind of makes sense to me based on what you just said about some of your attachment history. Like some of us learn to be more externally focused than internally focused. And these are also skills that someone has to teach us if we never had a parent that is like sitting with us when we cry, comforting us, letting us know that it's okay to feel things, it will pass, we can talk about it. We might never have really developed the natural way of doing that with ourselves all the time. It may feel more natural to take care of other people than it feels like it is to take care of ourselves.
It does feel more natural to take care of other people and make sure that their needs are met. I do, however, know like I protect myself first in most situations. Like I'm not necessarily anxious. Like if my husband doesn't text me back right away. I mean, post my daughter's accident, I'm a little bit more anxious about where the whereabouts are of my entire family. Like if I don't hear back from them, I'm like, oh, I hope there wasn't something, a tragedy that just happened.
Intrusive thoughts can leak in a little bit.
But as far as like, is he out with somebody else or does he not care about me anymore? That's not something that I really even consider. Maybe when we were dating, maybe a little in the beginning or something, but nothing really, not in an anxious way. It's more like I just try to avoid conflict at all costs and stay even keeled. I try not to freak out too much or go to the depths of despair.
Yeah.
It's always just kind of right in the center.
You're also always so busy that
I keep myself busy.
Yeah, you keep yourself busy.
Yeah.
You don't really allow yourself the time.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
if we lived in New York, and because New York was nuts during the pandemic, going back to that, like if you were forced to just be still, like where would your mind have taken you?
Yeah, I'd probably be in a padded cell straight up because I don't give myself a lot of time to fester.
Yeah, she thrives on staying busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the chaos of a full schedule.
Yeah.
Because you keep moving forward and then you look back, you're like, wow, can't believe the pandemic was 5 years ago. That, doesn't even feel like anything happened.
Crazy.
Because I just keep myself busy.
Yeah.
It also feels really good to check things off your list.
It really does.
Yeah.
Get the little dopamine hit.
Then I get real avoidant. I just started reading this book series.
Oh boy, here we go.
I started this book series last week and I finished, it's probably between all 4 books, about 3,000 pages. And I read them all in a matter of days.
Oh my goodness.
It's like weird, right? Like I even had to chat GPT and ask if I'm okay. Because, I was validated by ChatGPT in that, sometimes I just need like a mental vacation because I am so busy. And I'm using this as like my reset, like just to forget everybody else and all of, in my life and just focus on somebody else's kind of drama and their characters. And now I finished the books and now I'm like a little lost.
Yeah.
Because I put myself into them for so I don't know, a week maybe.
Yeah. It's really interesting you say that because I don't know if it's like new research or just something I remember learning about in school, but there's something really real about the relief that we can feel through connecting with story or other characters. And part of that actually goes right back to that trauma loop. When you watch a movie or you read a book, you're taken through like the full process, the introduction, what's going on, getting to that big moment, and then also the resolution and reading, being emotionally connected through that entire process can feel so regulating in our body, where sometimes in our real life, it's hard to feel like we're at that other side of resolution.
Yeah.
Maybe until we're a few years out and we look back and we realize things are okay, they're stable, but it's kind of hard to really feel comforted by that sometimes in our real life. So I think that's really normal.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. I didn't think about it like that. That makes so much sense. Because at the end of the book, usually if it's a good book, there's a good resolution. Sometimes it's like, a gut punch and it ends horribly and then it leaves you hanging and then you're lost without,
yes,
a compass for a while.
I don't like reading books like that.
I don't either. I need like a happy resolution. Everything works out. Boy gets girl, whatever it is,
I need at least like little pieces of hope along the way.
Exactly.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this series that I read was like a full on emotional roller coaster, ups and downs in this relationship that was just so toxic and traumatic. And then there was so much growth in the one toxic person over the course of like years of their lives. And it turned out to be such a wonderful story. But my God, the beginning was so hard to read because it was super like parallel to my first really like, not my first boyfriend, but the first guy that I allowed to treat me like shit because I thought I was in love with him. That whole thing, it was, and it just mirrored that in so many ways. So it was weird.
You therapized yourself without realizing?
I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah, but I think that makes it even more, right? Because like if you can actually really identify with the characters on the page and then going through that journey with them.
And even as like a 40-year-old now, or almost 40, right? I was 18 at the time that all of that relationship kind of took place over a few years. But looking back at it now and kind of seeing myself in the character in the story who was treated like shit and whatever, I ended up like I am so pissed off at that guy now because he stole so much time from me and I allowed him to steal that much time from me, but I also didn't really know what I was doing with myself. I was a kid, but it just solidified like, oh my God, the guy was such a fucking loser. Like, what was I doing? So maybe I can
We
take
all
that.
saw it, by the way.
I know. But I couldn't see through my like full-blown love for this guy. Like I saw his capability and he's got so much to offer. He didn't. He didn't. He's probably still a loser. And honestly, I don't even care where he's at or what he's doing. But it really just was like I had to kind of heal that teenage girl in me because it was sad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you're talking about that, I'm just thinking sometimes those feelings of anger towards the other person actually are a sign of healing to me because you've kind of healed, like you said, the teenage girl in you. You've kind of, because even as you're talking about that, I can almost sense this compassion. Like I was just a kid. I didn't know. If we get stuck in shaming ourselves, sometimes we don't like fully see the full picture for what it was because we're just like seeing ourselves in this negative light without all that context. And it's hard to really move through it. And so for you to kind of see yourself in that way, then there's this like anger that makes sense towards this other person that's taken something from me. And you can kind of like feel that, move through that, and kind of get to the other side.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a universal human thing that, especially for like teenage girls, they've all kind of dated losers, right? Mm-hmm. Like you probably dated your fair share of full-blown losers.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a few.
I don't feel so bad about myself then.
I'll join you on that one.
Okay, good.
I was going to say, I wonder if anyone would be listening to this. Should I watch what I say? But I think I'm good.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody's had at least one loser in their life.
Yep.
Yeah. And
I mean, I hope so too, because it makes you grow and realize what you're not going to take. I'm not going to put up with that.
Totally.
Right. That treatment. Like there's things that I wish I could change about my husband, but never about how he treats me. He's always treated me. He's so supportive of me. And like, I'm constantly thinking, oh, I should do this. And maybe this could be a good business idea. He's like, yeah, fuck it. Do it. That's cool. He just is super supportive of me. Always has been. Lets me kind of do what I want to do without holding me back in any way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that he's always given me is a lot of just the love that is just stable. It's just stable.
That's beautiful.
There's other things I wish he could get better at, but
I think that's why those times in our life, I mean, they're learning. Those relationships are so important, kind of not just what you know. That's why what your friend tells you you may not listen because you kind of have to learn by feeling what it feels like to be in that relationship, realizing like you decide you want something different, you deserve something different. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it takes time to learn that though, because it's that tale as old as time. He's different when he's with me. They don't see him the way I do. Ugh, barf. It's all that.
Yeah, I know. I also can't help but thinking, like back to being a teenager and me too. Like I look back and cringe at the way that I treated some other people too. Like, guys that I was friends with that maybe it was like going that way. And then I kind of like freaked out and didn't treat them right and things like that. And even those are huge learning experiences, how we treat other people, how we give comfort, and then what we accept for ourselves, I think is all really important.
Yeah, I definitely had done that as well. Like treated people like I shouldn't have, after I think maybe, it's like the bully becomes a bully or the bullied becomes the bully kind of thing. I was kind of bullied and then became the bully in other situations in that, like in a relationship kind of way.
So I want to get into something and pick your brain a little bit without specifying who we're talking about and protecting this person. But there's somebody in my life who, let's talk about like real, like deep trauma, what somebody would do with this. Somebody who experienced like a rape or sexual molestation as a child from somebody who was not an adult, but very close to being an adult, but definitely old enough to know better. And then with the situation being presented to the parents, the people that are supposed to, love and protect and seek justice for this type of behavior, for that to be brushed under the rug and ignored. And this person is now well into adulthood that this happened to and has lived with this trauma and this hatred for their parents for ignoring what happened and brushing it aside their entire lives, and has basically created their identity in their trauma. What does a person who has held on to something for the majority of their lives do with that?
Yeah. Can I ask just one other contextual question? The person that they were abused by, was that someone that they knew?
In the neighborhood, yes.
Okay, yeah. So the reason I ask is just there's another layer of trauma when, and I think this would still apply in this situation, when the person who was supposed to protect us is also the person that's hurting us. So like sexual abuse inside of homes at the hands of parents, that's especially confusing because a child still has to depend on this person who is abusing them. And in this situation, it sounds like, the parents weren't the ones who were doing the abuse, but they are the ones who were responsible for ignoring it and for not getting that person help and validating the impact on them, their pain in that. I imagine that was hugely scary.
I will add, just for context, that this was like many decades ago. So part of it to me is kind of a generational thing. Whereas
the sign of the times,
where the parents, it was common for, you don't talk about your feelings. It was common that you don't talk about your personal business because then you're going to be the talk of the town and everybody's going to know you for that certain thing. So how much of that is really excusable, and so again, going back to what does a person do who has now, reached senior age and has not even attempted to.
In a little bit more context, and if you want to cut this out, you can, but it may just be helpful to her. It was a boy being molested by a neighborhood boy. I think that's important too, to the context.
Well, I could see that. I think I could see parents wanting to hide that even more, like for that stigmatized. Right.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think you're right about that.
So there's like three things coming to mind for me in terms of this happening. I try to believe, for the most part, a lot of times parents are doing what they think is right. They're doing the best that they can with the information that they have. They think this is the way to protect their kid. They maybe don't know what to do, so it's better to kind of just pretend it never happened, wait for it to pass over. Or maybe even going into it, there was a fear that it would make it worse. It would make their kid more stigmatized, more whatever the concern is. So just holding that there may not have been a malicious intent, and there has to be an impact on that person. I'm just thinking about, what do you learn if you are in a situation where you're in danger, your world is dangerous, you can't tell anyone about that? I would imagine I would have a really hard time being vulnerable with anyone after something like that, having an experience like that dismissed, something that's like one of the worst things that could ever happen to someone, not being protected in that place. And so I could imagine that having impacts for a long
Mhm.
time.
For this person, it has impacted their entire life. But this person did not speak about it until probably in the last decade or so,
Mm,
to outwardly, you know.
yeah.
To family, children, things
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've worked with people who have blocked out memories like that, and then working in therapy have actually connected dots and remembered things that had been repressed. So the one thing I'll say is, like, I mean, that's awful that that happened to someone. Like, that should never happen to any child. Every child should be protected from that. I think there's something can be really dangerous about making your trauma your identity, rather than something that happened to you that was not your fault, that you can heal from, that you can like process and you can kind of leave as a past memory,
Right.
versus kind of bringing that with you for the rest of your life as a part of you. There's something that feels a little bit, and I'm saying like for people in that situation, I just wonder if that kind of keeps them stuck in that in a way. There's lots of different therapy approaches to like reprocess some memories like that so that they can sort of be learned from, integrated, and left in the past. So while it's
Kind of like move through it rather than just letting
Yeah.
it kind of hover.
And to add to, this person is also somebody who has had a lot of trauma. This was like kind of the, not really say the
jump.
catalyst, but there was some, I mean, there was medical trauma when this person was smaller, and that has definitely changed the chemical makeup of this person's brain, and that they had to be on a lot of pharmaceuticals their whole life too. But there's been this constant pattern of bad things happening, right? And no matter how minor the bad thing is, it's the end of the world. You know, nothing good in this person's mind can happen to them because there has been so much bad, right?
Literally just something as simple as like walking on the beach and your watch falls into the sand. Nobody in their life will ever stop hearing about the time their watch fell in the sand.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's intense to be around a person like that. What about advice for the spouse or the siblings or the child of somebody like that?
Because
like,
it impacts everybody around them.
Of course.
And they don't understand why they're so ostracized and why they're so lonely.
Because they pull themselves out of relationships.
They end up pushing everybody away because all they're doing is dumping their trauma on any ear that'll listen. Even if you go through the grocery store, hey, how are you today? Awful. Let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
It's
straight up.
It's not healthy in any way.
So this is one of those things I think is like sort of a tough love. And you may have heard this before, where the things that you've been through are not your fault, but they're your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for all of us, it's not our fault what has ever happened to us, but it is our responsibility to keep our bodies feeling safe and regulated so that we don't, like you said, not only like dump our trauma onto other people, but actually so that we don't repeat those patterns and hurt other people. Most people who sexually abuse or assault someone have had that happen to them.
Right.
And so it is our responsibility to kind of stop and heal ourselves so that we don't hurt other people.
And in this case, I don't think that was the case. It wasn't the case.
No.
This person was not a victim, then became a perpetrator themselves.
Not at all.
It's
Actually went quite the opposite. The line of work that this person went into was working in facilities where bad people went.
They were the overseer of the bad people.
And they were very protective.
Overly protective as a friend, a brother, a sister, a parent, overly protective.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So not that every person who's like abused becomes an abuser, but most of the abusers were abused, if that makes sense.
Abused. Absolutely.
Well, I do know that the abuser also abused their siblings.
Oof.
And the person that we've been talking about has no idea where this person is at this point in life. The abuser. But the only thing, unfortunately, that will satisfy this person would be justice. And so i.e.
revenge,
right? They have literally talked about like I want to kill this person for what they did to me and the other people that they harmed. So how does a person process that kind of anger that has affected them their entire life?
Yeah, that's big.
It's a lot of undoing.
How does somebody
unraveling.
process that when they're not even close to willing to work with somebody? How do they self-process? Because I don't ever see this person seeking professional help.
Obviously, she knows, she's very tight-knit. She knows this person very well too. So
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like working through something like that without, because even not just a therapist, but like a therapist really specifically trained in trauma to really skillfully take you back to that place, understand how that impacted you, help you move through it, reprocess some of that, let go of some of these stuck emotions. I don't know how one like could really do that on their own. And I'm just thinking about the things that you're saying. There's a lot of signs that there's a lot of unprocessed material here. Like one of the first things that you said was really small, insignificant things becoming these big triggers, which is just, to me, a sign that there's like underneath that an accumulation, a lot of unprocessed things. So as soon as one little thing happens on top, it like triggers all this stuff at the bottom. And then everyone else outside of that person is like, what are you doing? Why are you upset about a watch falling on the ground?
It's your watch just fell in the sand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your watch just fell in the sand.
Right.
Big deal. Yeah.
So those like triggers, when the intensity of the response doesn't match the situation, you can usually tell like, okay, like this is hitting something else inside of you. There's something inside of you haven't dealt with. And then that anger, that wanting justice all this time later. I think, of course, there's a righteous anger with something like this.
like that, and that's what I've tried to communicate too. Like, absolutely, what happened to this person was horrible, and wanting the revenge and the justice, totally understandable. But we also don't know: is this person even alive? Is this person in a wheelchair? Does this person, have a good
Maybe
life
he's in
or
jail.
a miserable life? Is this person in jail? Like, there's so many unknowns, and this person is just allowing these thoughts to rule their life and all of their relationships, and then wondering, why don't I have any healthy relationships? Like, you can't, if you don't do the work to heal yourself, how do you expect other people to deal with you? How do you expect other people to enjoy your presence?
Well, let me ask you, Stephanie, what have you communicated in that way? Have you communicated anything in that way of like, you got to, deal with your shit?
Not yet.
Okay.
But another person that is in close proximity has. I'm not ready yet, to be honest with you. I haven't had that conversation yet.
Yeah, that's tough.
And did you say that this was another child that was abusing them?
It was
like a teenager?
Like a late teenager. Somebody old enough to know that this is not okay, but not an adult. And when later in life, when the victim tried to do something about it, the statute of limitations was too far out. It was way too late for anything to be done. I even gotten as far as to getting an retired FBI I don't know,
private investigator,
an investigator, yeah, an FBI guy. I don't know what his title is exactly, to do some research and kind of figuring out, if there's anything that could be done and where this person was, and then nothing kind of came of it. So, it's not for a lack of effort. There's definitely things that were done to try to, quote unquote, get justice or get revenge.
When the victim became an adult.
When the victim was well into adulthood. But, everybody around this person really just wants this person to heal.
Yeah.
Because there's not, honestly, a lot of time left on this earth, for this person. So.
Yeah. And I think there's something that I know teenager is kind of a little bit of gray territory, because you're like developmentally, like you probably know that that's wrong. But I also would just have a lot of questions. Like if this was a case that I was working with, like I would just have a lot of questions about that teenager. Usually kids who are abusing other kids are kids who are abused by the adults, right? Like, so I think this eye for an eye thing gets really tricky because, again, zooming out context, it's maybe that person was being abused by someone else. And like, is that eye for an eye, the end of the story, would that justice really make it feel complete? Or
yes, that's the question that I have asked over and over and over again. I'm like, would your life change? Fundamentally, would your life completely change and you would just be this different, like outgoing, happy all the time person if you really got what you wanted? And I don't think the answer is gonna be yes. I really don't.
No, I don't think so either.
And I think that's why I think therapy is so important, because to work with a therapist and kind of go back, there's like specific models that walk clients through accessing old memories and then having them. It's like they kind of have one foot in the past memory and then one foot in the present with the therapist, so they can access it without getting totally overwhelmed by it, but figure out like, what are the beliefs about myself, the world, that formed based on this. Work on like reinstalling those beliefs, modifying them, processing the emotions that got stuck. And if you go through all of that and then you decide, you know what, like some form of justice still feels really important to me, then you can like, okay, sure. Maybe you talk about your therapist then, what that looks like. It probably won't look like killing someone, right? Like when you've kind of processed yourself, that feels like on the other side. But I think the important thing is not to be making really big decisions in that place of unprocessed trauma, but to be really clear and integrated and present when you are deciding how you want to handle something like that.
And what like modality of therapy would you suggest for somebody like this victim? Like, is there like a specific one that, if God willing, they're able to say, yes, I think I'm ready to seek professional help? Like what kind of therapy would be a good one to start with there?
Yes. So EMDR, it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is one of the like most recommended, most research-backed methods for reprocessing trauma. And the eye movement in the name of it is that basically you're thinking about that memory and then you're tracking like the therapist's finger with your eyes. That's that other stimulation that's keeping you in the present with your therapist, so you don't get too overwhelmed by it.
That's your one foot in reality, one foot in the past. Okay.
Exactly. But you get to bring out, like I was saying, the traumatic memories get stored with the thoughts and the emotions and the beliefs. So you get to pull those out, process the emotion that got stuck back there, see what the thoughts are, evaluate if those still make sense, and kind of move through that with your therapist. And so, a lot of times people are wary of therapy because they're like, therapy is making me so sad. Like I feel so sad. But the therapy is not making you feel that. What you went through is making you feel that. The therapy is just helping you get it unstuck from under all these layers so that you can actually just let it out of you. So that's one method that kind of helps to go back. And also the other thing too is sometimes these memories get stored. Like if this happened when this person was a kid, some of the thoughts that he's having around it, or he or she is having around it, might developmentally look like thoughts that you would have at that age when this happened. So you kind of get to integrate that back into who you are now as an adult, have more adult thoughts around it, which could be like things like, that wasn't my fault, that never should have happened to me, I deserved protection. But also might be things like I can take care of myself now, I know how to decide who to trust. Typically don't involve things like, I'm going to go kill that person, right? Like you have a more integrated view of your story in the world. So that's a really effective modality. There's also a newer therapy called internal family systems, or IFS. And that basically helps people to understand these different, it's similar to the attachment strategies, these different parts of us that form when we go through something really difficult, when we go through something really traumatic. So we may develop parts of us that like get really angry and get really activated and want revenge. And we can sort of understand how those parts got formed, figure out like what is the really core wound or need underneath that, which is probably something like being seen, being protected by your caregivers. I imagine there's these really, really important parts of this person that were impacted, that healing is going in and looking at those wounds, letting that person get in touch with that, the pain of not being seen, of not being protected, give them a different experience where they do get to be seen and protected by the therapist, like some reparenting work. And I think healing that gives you that, again, more integrated view of your life and your story. And there's just some things that are too big for us to do ourselves. Like, we're not meant to carry that level of pain on our own. Like, our humans are just not designed that way. We're designed to relate and heal through connection. Like, of course, yes, we have to take care of ourselves, but I think trying to self-navigate or self-heal something like that can be really challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's something that has helped as far as like the few times I've seen this person over the last few years, the trauma dumping for sure. I got an earful, in a parking lot. And I was like, whoa, oh, wow. I had no idea. It explains so much about who this person is and has been for my whole life since I've known them. But I think over the years of constantly sharing that story, maybe it's helping at least a little bit getting it out. And when you share something over and over and over again, it almost kind of, it's not so painful. It doesn't.
But that's also, in my eyes, where it's become the identity.
Absolutely. I understand what you're saying and completely agree with you. I just mean like for this person, possibly this is like their first step to trying to heal themselves in any way that they know how, is at least opening up and saying something, because you didn't know about it until you were well into adulthood yourself. So.
Yeah. Right. And if that person learned to be ashamed of it because they're whatever their parents thought they were protecting them by not talking about that, that's shameful. We shouldn't talk about it. Maybe they thought they were bad because this happened. So even them kind of sharing that and having witness could be to that story could be maybe helpful for them in some ways. But I think it's, I don't know, I just think you always want to be careful too about like who you're telling your story to, making sure that they're safe people, also that you're not triggering them. Like, there's so many things that can happen. And I think just having the support of a therapist that can really help you like think through all of those impacts. What's it going to be like for you? What's going to be like for them? How can you make sure that even that sharing feels safe? I think just having a little bit of guidance could really go a long way for someone who's been through something like that.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I hope they take it up eventually whenever you bring it up.
I mean, it's been brought up in the past, but maybe not to the level that it needs to be.
Yeah. And this person is married with kids?
This person has children, but is not married
any longer.
Because that was your other question about like how to deal with being in a relationship with someone like this. And I think that's a part of it too. Like boundaries, however it impacts you as that person's partner. I know not either of you, but rhetorical you, to be that person's partner and see this happening. Like, I can't interact with you when you're in that place. I need you to get support to heal these things. And I think you can have a loving conversation with someone.
I want this to segue a little bit into how processing your trauma with your children. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because we do hear it a lot in stories with people that we talk to on the podcast, and I've experienced it some in my own life, but the effects, like talking about, especially like on the brain of a parent who's been through trauma and wants to talk about it with their children, how does that affect the child? And is there a proper way to go about doing something like that?
Yeah. Talk about like their own childhood trauma with their kids.
Just talking about just trauma dumping on your child, because your child is always there. So in some cases they can kind of feel like you feel safe with them, especially like an older child. Maybe one who's a teenager.
Like bringing adult problems to a child.
Bringing adult problems to a child and how that affects the child.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And I think you, to that point, I think you have to be really careful about what is developmentally appropriate for that child to hear, to take in, because what might feel really normal to you as part of your life or your story is like your kid learning that sometimes the world is not safe. And like, when are they ready to learn that and take that in and really know that they have your protection and safety and comfort, even if something goes wrong. So I think like being careful about what developmentally, like where it feels like they're at, but then also the reason that you're sharing that with them. I don't know, I think there's something that's really useful. Like I'm just thinking about like my mother's own trauma that I know about. And I think there's something that's useful for me as an adult to understand about that, really to understand my life and my family line a little bit better. And even as a kid, maybe to help me understand my relationship with my grandma, who was like not a grandma,
Right.
who was like not a warm person. So I think the reason is really important. Or is it like sharing to help your child understand something about you and your life and your story and help them understand like where they've come from versus, sometimes I hear things said to kids almost as like an excuse. So like, and this is things like, oh my gosh, I had it so much worse than you. I went through this, this, and this. You couldn't even imagine. You have it so good. And it actually ends up being really dismissive of the kid's own life, like in the present moment.
I've done that.
And
I'm really guilty of that. I have my version of like walking to school up the hill both ways with no shoes or what. I have my own version of that because, like, let's be fair. Every generation has it easier than the last in some way. I mean, my parents had, things that they had to deal with that I could never even comprehend, and same with me. My kids are complaining about stuff and I'm just like, dude, you don't even know. You don't even know. But
yeah,
and I try not to be dismissive, but sometimes when you're a busy parent, oh my God, just stop. Yeah.
of course. One other thing I want to say about this, like attachment thing of like getting it right with our kids, being responsive to something that they have going on. There's research on this that we only have to get it right about 30% of the time.
Oh, thank God.
Life is busy. Sometimes like there is just too much going on. Like I cannot deal with that. Like that's okay. So first of all, you could always like go back and have a conversation with your kids about like, you know what, like I have a lot going on right now. Sometimes it's hard for me to show up for you and I'm working on that, but like your experience is important to me. Like tell me what's going on. Sometimes there's not time for that and that is okay. So about 30% of the time is what we're going for.
Oh, thank God. This is such beautiful news.
Where it's like, there are parents out there who, like, for example, like nowadays, like my mom will cry about absolutely anything. She'll cry, on the phone with me, in front of me, or whatever. She's always been very, very emotional. Just like I said earlier, she's gotten worse as she's gotten older. Love you, Mom, but it's true. But anyways, like then there's the opposite for parents who are like, I don't want to show emotion in front of my child and they need to know that I'm strong all the time. Like, where is that delicate balance of what you show your kid emotionally and what you don't show your kid emotionally? Like where I shared my example with my son, how I went in the bathroom to hide and cry, right? Because I don't want him to internalize it's his fault that I'm upset,
Yeah.
Or like I was going through some stuff. I think it was like the very next day, or maybe even that night, actually, where my daughter really triggered me in a way, and I lashed out at her in a very inappropriate way. And she was very upset, and she was crying, and I had to apologize to her and hold her. And then I finally was like, okay, I just got to come out and say it. Listen, this is what Mom's going through. I'm having a really hard time processing your brother's injury, because it unlocked some feelings that I had. I had to explain to her, like in a childlike way, like what PTSD is, and it's like, but then I feel after the fact, did I share too much? I don't know. Where is that, where is that balance?
I think that's beautiful that you had that conversation with her, because I think so many of us, can remember being on the receiving end of something like that as kids, being lashed out. And it maybe didn't even make sense why. Like we did something like maybe we would do all the time, or we did something small and our parents lashed out at us, but they actually never gave us more information about what was going on for them, helped us understand that like maybe parts of it were because of things that we were doing, but parts of it were because of other things that they were carrying. So I think it's so healing. I think it's so impactful that you kind of, to that, even like that idea of the trauma loop, you kind of going back to your daughter, giving her that comfort, closing that loop. Hey, like this is what's going on and it's really hard and it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Like,
and it probably has actually nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with you because she might have been doing the same thing at a different time when you were.
Well, she doesn't help though. It was
that's true.
Her attitude is.
And that's right. That's okay too. Cause I think there's this, like it's this balance of care and comfort and structure too. It's not all like coddling. Like we also need to teach our kids how it is okay, like how we do want them to behave. We have to like model some of that.
For sure.
I'm a terrible model though, because I get so irritated and annoyed because my 3 kids are all like different personalities and they just clash so hard. So, what happened was that they were fighting and they were bickering about something stupid, and I was nearby and I'm just like, can you please not right now? I'm already at this level. They don't know where I'm at. I'm way up here and I'm being quiet about it, but inside I'm up here. And so they're like, the bomb, the bomb is ticking, basically. It's counting down. And they don't really realize that. So they're at each other's throats. And I'm like, can you please not do this during dinner? It's been a really rough day. Stop, And then my daughter lashes out at me with this huge attitude, like, stay out of our business, mom, but like real nasty. And it's like, it's boiling at this point, right? And then the very next thing that she goes to say, I'm assuming is going to be targeted at me. And that's where that instant happened where I lashed out at her and it was this big blow up thing. But in reality, she wasn't actually coming back at me. She was just telling me that my younger son, who's like 7, was in the bathroom calling my name. That's all she was doing. But knowing her personality and how combative she is, and she loves to antagonize and she's very argumentative, I'm automatically assuming that she's fighting me, right? So I lash out at her when in reality, she was just telling me that her brother needed me and he was calling my name. So I felt like an even bigger asshole because I had this horrible reaction with her. And then that's what led to, okay, I'm going to sit down with you. We're going to cry together, because we did. We cried about it. I told her what I was going through. I told her, because she is that kind of child where she's very curious and she has to know why. She has to get to the bottom of everything. She listens. She's an eavesdropper. She listens to anything and everything within earshot.
She's my spirit animal.
Yes, she picks up. She's like you. She picks up on everything. So she's not the kind of person I can hide those things from. So, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to tell you your brother's injury is what triggered these feelings of guilt from when he was little and he was going through cancer and I couldn't be there for him. And, I really wanted to be there for him and I couldn't because I had to go to work and that made me really sad. And so when you lashed out at me with your attitude, I was already up here and it just exploded and that wasn't right. And I was wrong and I'm sorry. And,
Did she apologize for her attitude?
I think so.
Okay, good.
I think she did.
Because sometimes that's important too, right?
That's huge though, a moment like that.
Yeah, that is huge. My husband's really good at that. Like,
see, that's the thing. I'm not normally good at that at all.
Yeah. Explaining myself and apologizing and like apologizing, yeah, but like to explain why.
Apologizing because you're obligated to apologize.
Well, I feel like I'm going to screw my children up if I don't. So it's like, I'm really sorry I did that. I didn't mean it. Blah, 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 whatever. Just general apology.
Are you genuinely sorry though? A lot of the time?
Yeah, because I see their face or something, especially my 9-year-old. She's so sensitive and she feels so deeply over like everything.
Mine, yeah. The one I was talking about. Very similar.
But she doesn't have an attitude. She's like yours minus the attitude.
Yeah.
She's very sweet and kind and wants everybody to be happy. And she cries about a lot of stuff. Everything is like super sad. And I think that triggers me because I've made a point in my life to be the opposite of emotionally vulnerable in that way where I cry over everything because that's what I saw growing up. To see that all the time, just I don't want to be that person. I always found it to be very burdensome to those around you, because they have to like, oh, it's okay. And they have to do this thing where they try to make you feel better and blah, blah. So I don't ever want to be that kind of person.
Right.
And not that I'm saying my 9-year-old is like that, but when she does cry over something that is so, in my eyes as an adult, insignificant, when there is a very easy solution if we just take a step back and look, and we'll find it. Her bathing suit was missing. She's going to a birthday party, and it was just absolute tears and chaos. And I'm like, if we just stop crying over it and like look around, we'll probably find your bathing suit. Well, her sister had actually taken it to her friend's house, and so the bathing suit was not there. So, but she just, the whole ride to her friend's house, she's doing that after sob, like the whole time. And I'm just like still triggered, like it's not a big, like, shh, in my head, thinking like, oh my God, like grow up. It's fine. And part of me still feels that way. And I don't know how to not. I didn't say that to her. I did tell her, I think we should probably stop crying and like try to figure this out, because I started to get like angry about it inside. And so I was not nice about it in the moment, but I didn't tell her that I think she needs to grow up.
Yeah.
I thought it. So I don't know how to go through that. How do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you like allow your people to be emotional and not see that as like a hindrance to you?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's one thing that's coming to mind that I think is really important, especially in parenting, which is kind of just taking a moment for self-validation first. So even like if you have a moment like that, and even you just like saying to yourself, this is really irritating right now. Like it makes sense. It makes sense that feels like annoying for me to handle, or whatever like the word is for you. And kind of like you even reminding yourself that your experience makes sense, your experience is valid. Because we can't get that from our kids. Like the child-parent dynamic is very different from the partner dynamic, where we can maybe regulate ourselves but get validation from our partner. We're not necessarily doing that with our children. So to kind of first have that moment for you to kind of just like, okay, this is annoying. It makes sense, but like I can do this. I also think there's sometimes I hear people worrying about moving closer to emotions because they don't want to make them bigger. Like they don't want to reinforce that or encourage it. But I find it actually is usually the opposite. If we just kind of give kids a little bit of room, like, I believe you. I believe that this is really upsetting for you. Tell me what you're feeling. Give a little bit of comfort. Hopefully that like just kind of helps the kids learn to regulate that in their body, to know that like being upset or uncomfortable is really different from being in danger. And we kind of need to like teach kids the difference. Like you can tolerate being upset. It's okay. You can cry. We'll figure it out. But that like you don't need to have this like panic, fear emotion over everything, and kind of helping them learn how to discern that, so that when they do grow up and they're in relationships, they're able to kind of like match with people who are accepting of their emotions and aren't kind of like wanting them to dismiss themselves or something like that.
I just get reminded about like my youngest is a big whiner. Not necessarily a crier. He whines over everything. And I find myself saying a lot to him, is this worth crying about?
Right.
So maybe I am being really dismissive, but like most of the time he's just whining. So when he is crying, oftentimes it's over something silly, of course, kind of like your story, but like, is this worth crying about? No? Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard having to regulate everybody else's emotions in your life. I
can't even regulate my own.
That's what I mean. It's like
really hard.
Yeah. So it was really good for me to hear this 30% like thing, because that makes me feel really good. I feel like right now I'm at probably like a 70%, 30%. I'm probably going to screw them up a little, but 70% I'm pretty decent. Like I really feel like I have a lot more open communication with my kids than my parents did about how we're feeling, about things, allowing them to sit in their feelings. Like last week, my son didn't get his permit because he didn't pass the vision test. And normally I'd be like, dude, it's cool. We'll just come back another day. But he's like, I'm really disappointed right now. And I'm like, it's very disappointing. Absolutely. That's really disappointing. I'm sorry that that's happened to you. And, just letting him feel that instead of dismissing it like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Because when you're that age, it is a huge deal.
It is. And I think that I'm just thinking about what you were saying earlier about like your life being so full and having so much, and like kind of being so used to like problem solve, we'll figure it out, you'll do it again, keep moving. And to just pause, like something I tell people, like sometimes I tell my clients too, is these things don't have to take a long time. Actually, the more and more that you give your kids a little bit of room and they get used to feeling how they feel, hopefully like they're learning how to do this without you more and more. And so just kind of taking like that little bit of time to like be with someone. Yeah. Like this sucks. It's disappointing. You thought you were going to have your license. Now you don't, hopefully it's not like we have to sit and wallow in this all day long, but it's like, I can be with you for a few minutes.
I feel like I'm not a wallower. I mean, sometimes I guess it depends on the situation, depends on the depth of the situation, but I really try not to wallow. I don't like to get too up and I don't like to get too down. Like I said before, I kind of just stay in the middle and I have some waves around that center line, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't allow myself to get there. I have been a little overly emotional lately though. I don't know if it's these books that are triggering stuff, but this morning, and I'm not like a big crier. I really am not. And I heard a song on the radio when I'm driving my son to school today. And I was like, oh, I used to listen to this album when you were in my belly and I was making your curtains for your nursery and like thinking about how cute he is. And he's like, yeah, cool. Like he really couldn't have cared less. And then like after I watched him walk across the street and I'm driving home and I'm like sobbing.
Oh,
and I'm not like that.
How old is he?
15.
Oh.
And he was just like a little squeaky.
you just like realize
little
how grown.
I know.
You realize how grown he is.
I know. So that was tough.
These moments that all hits you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't allow myself time to feel that, or I'm busy.
Yeah. And just because we don't give ourselves time doesn't mean it's not there inside of us.
Yep. That's true.
I actually came across some really adorable baby pictures of him that I'm not sure that you have. I need to send them to you.
Yay.
Oh.
She's our photographer. She literally.
Really?
And
I am a photographer,
Yeah.
but I don't have, I've taken like one family photo of you guys like 8 trillion years ago
That's true.
because you're too busy.
Mhm.
Again, we go back to that. She's too busy for me to do actual family photos for her.
As you're talking about that, I was just thinking, like, I think the other distinction that's really important is like just behaviors and emotions. So like, your kids. So like when your kids are showing like really vulnerable emotion, that might be different from their whining because they are like, they didn't get what they want or like something else like that. And so not that you have to kind of like lean in and coddle all of that, but you kind of can tell when there's something that's like feeling more, I don't know, soft or vulnerable, that they really need you. They're really reaching for you. And you want to lean in versus maybe provide a little structure around. So not like that there's an expectation that you're like being responsive to that every single time, all the time. Cause I know it's a lot.
Right. Yep. It's hard to navigate though, because sometimes you've got the boy who cried wolf kind of thing with your kids. Everything is a problem. So it's like, at what point do I believe this one is the real one? Depending on the kid. I've got one kid who never cried. 2 kids, actually. Half of my kids, I have 4 kids. Half of them are extremely emotional, very emotional, high needs. And the other 2 are the opposite. They're very similar to me. And if something happens to the more quiet ones, emotionally quiet, and they're really upset, I take that very seriously because they're not like that all the time. The other 2, I'm like, I've got to kind of take the temperature of the situation. Okay, where are we on the scale of like, this is appropriate to get over it.
Yeah. But that too, like sometimes emotional responsiveness isn't like, I'm going to sit here and cry with you and fix this for you. Sometimes it's just like, I see you and I believe that you're really sad right now. That's really hard.
Yeah, I need to learn that because I'm a fixer.
Yeah.
You tell me a problem, I'm like, all right, let's figure out how to fix this right now, because that's what I do in my own life. Something happens, how do I fix this?
Yeah.
I don't have time to let this not be fixed. As the whole thing with husbands and wives and the way they communicate. And if I'm just coming to him and be like, you'll never guess what happened to me today, and I'm going on, and he's just trying to give me advice. Oh my God, I just want you to be like, yeah, fuck her too. I don't need advice.
That sucks. I tell that to my husband all the time. He's finally learned. He'll just look at me and kind of get it for a second and he'll go, that sucks. And I'm like, thank you. You're finally learning.
Yeah.
Don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
Don't try to give me a solution.
That's right. But see, I'm also the same person.
Yeah,
the same kind of person.
Yeah.
So you come to me with your problems. I'm like, let's, whatever. And instead of that sucks, I need to learn that myself because that's what I want out of people too.
Almost everyone is that way. That's like part of training and becoming a therapist. I remember doing an exercise where it's like you think about what you need in a really, like, whether it's like you're sad or angry, whatever, you think about what you need from someone else versus what your first instinct is to give someone else. And it's usually not the same thing.
That's right.
And so kind of just thinking about, okay, what would I maybe need in this moment? Would I need someone to solve this, or do I just need someone to like be like, yeah, that sucks, she's a bitch, whatever it is, versus solving it for you.
And I remember watching somebody, it was probably like a reel or something a while ago, where this woman, I don't know if she's a therapist or she works in the mental health field at all, but she had said something that was like, when my kids come to me with an issue, I ask them, do you want me to help you solve this, or do you want me just to listen? And I'm like, I love that because it gives them permission. Like, Mom, I'm coming to you for advice, or no, I just want you to hear me. And I'm just trying to throw this at somebody who can handle it with me, and we'll move on. And I thought that was really cool. I have not implemented that into my life, but I'd like to, because I think it's a really cool strategy.
That is cool too, because I think it also helps teach your kids to figure out what they need, right? Like sometimes they're just upset, they're dysregulated, they're like maybe like wanting to give it or put it on someone else, and you're going to be there with them, but you're also kind of holding the mirror a little bit, like start to kind of learn about what you need in this space to feel more safe, regulated, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think I might start incorporating that with my teen. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she's 13.
That one's just like mine.
Yeah, she's 13, really, and into it. You know, it's a full-on attitude. Every time you say, hey, and she'll be like, what? Oh, okay. Nice to see you. Love you.
Are we at the phase where your kids are doing the mom, what, like they with the at the end?
No, she's just like very boring and everything. What? Like, I'm so annoying. My existence on this planet bothers her. Like, just the fact that I am like in her presence. What do you want? Oh, I was just giving you your dinner. Fine. You know, it's just okay. Well,
I'm waiting for
not
that.
Nice.
It's right around the corner for me at some point, because mine is like a parasite.
She's a parasite.
I don't know how else to explain it. She just loves me so much. I don't know why most of the time. I'm like, how am I this lovable? I don't know. But she can't fall asleep without me. Like, I literally lay with her until she falls asleep every night, and it's become a problem with my marriage. And I'm like, listen, dude, in a few more years, she's going to be like that. She's going to be like disgusted by my presence and not want me to even step foot in her room. And I'm just like waiting for that to happen. Then, of course, I'll probably hate it once it does happen. But, you know, she's just like we always said, if she could crawl back in, same thing with her daughter. If they could crawl back inside our womb, they would.
Well, I say one of my kids is an ultimate cuddler. I said if she could unzip my skin and like hug me from there, she would. Get crawl inside. In, she would.
It's crazy, just the like moving through, like growing up. You really parent so many different versions of these little people.
Yeah, so many different versions of each of them, and then they're all different from each other.
That's crazy. That's a total mind fuck for me. Is how the different human beings that you create with the same person turn out to be so incredibly different, down to like their food choices. You know, like they can't ever decide on what TV show to watch. Like, how are you so incredibly different from each other?
Yeah,
Same
but it's
DNA.
a beautiful thing.
Of course, it's beautiful, but like when you're a parent, you're just like, can you just fucking decide, please? Can you just pick something?
Yeah.
Just decide. You got, come on.
Yeah,
I know.
It can't be that difficult.
And I think that's too where that self-validation comes into play. Like, this is hard because it's hard, not because I'm a bad parent or not because there's something wrong with my kids, but because like this is always changing. They're always changing. What they need is always changing, and this is hard to figure out and like readjust all the time, and just kind of giving yourself some grace in that place too.
That's something that I think all moms need, is a little bit of like grace for themselves, because there's so much guilt that goes into, I just yelled at my kid over something that obviously you were at a 10 the other day and yelled at her thinking she's going to spout off again, and she wasn't. And to give yourself grace in that moment and be like, okay, and you did, and you apologized to her, and you came to her and you explained about it. And I think that's great, but it does not come natural to a lot of people.
That's also something that she'll probably forget about, but I'm going to live with the rest of my life.
Oh, I don't think she'll forget.
No, I don't think so either. At least, not maybe the reasons behind the yelling, but if you do this again and again, and you are a type of person that comes to apologize, like my husband, he's always somebody that comes to apologize, especially to the children. If he, says something he shouldn't say, or responds in an attitude he shouldn't, or is dismissive of something, he is up there within 10 minutes to explaining, apologizing, and that's who hopefully that's the kind of man that they're going to know their dad to be, is somebody who he's not perfect, he's going to screw up, and he's always going to be there to apologize. I think it's huge, because that's not the man I married. He's completely different than the guy that I married in the best way. And, it's very cool to see, and he teaches me a lot.
I think that feels true. I'm just kind of like running that through my body. And most of the big pivotal moments, like I remember, are those moments of repair with my parents as a kid. Like these, I can remember like 3 or 4 times that I did have that apology where I felt really seen. I felt like my feelings mattered to them. And I think those stick out more than like maybe when everything felt really smooth and there were like no bumps. I don't even think there were times like that in my childhood, but like,
yeah,
I think those moments are just so powerful in like teaching someone that they matter.
And I think a lot of times we all, as humans, we always remember the things that are the hardest, right? Like maybe you have like a lot of social media followers and you see the one negative comment out of thousands. That's the one you focus on, right? So something that happens to you in your childhood, the one negative thing that happened, it's almost like all those beautiful little moments are completely forgotten about. I spanked my son. We don't spank our kids. I spanked him one time when he was 3 years old. He was running into the parking lot when I had a newborn and a 2-year-old, and he was 3.5. And I grabbed him, and it was just a reaction to get his attention. And he still to this day says, "You remember when you used to spank us all the time?" Like, the fuck? And that's that's when he remembers it the most, is the one time. And he now thinks it was all the time. And I'm like, whoa. And that just makes me think back to my childhood and how is my memory skewed? All of these little traumatic things that I think were severely traumatic maybe didn't happen as often, or I don't even know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I find that quite funny and sad and annoying, and kind of pissed me off when he said that, like all the time.
Well, I think the point of our brains is to keep us safe, not to make us happy. And so, like, it would be a lot worse to miss something that could hurt us. That would be worse for a sense of safety than to like remember all the positive things. So it sounds like he has a brain that's working to protect him, but maybe like just that's not something that happened. You don't have to generalize that. That was.
And you don't have to tell everybody that, because it makes us sound like we're horrible parents, like we used to beat you. Don't say that at school, please.
Yeah. But it definitely, I think, takes a little bit more effort, like intention, to remember more positive things.
It's true. Yeah, it really is true. It's hard. It's easy to remember the traumatic events. I think that's just like natural. Like you said, it's our way for our brain to protect us.
Totally.
Thank you for letting us talk.
Yeah, we had our own therapy session.
Yeah, we did. Didn't expect to do that.
No, this was really fun. Yeah. No, I enjoyed this.
You have a very soothing voice. I really like you.
Oh, thank you. No, I like you guys too. This was so cool.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have like one maybe core belief or a mantra that you hold onto in your work with your trauma survivors?
I think like staying is better than escaping. So like staying with myself, not trying to not look at things, projecting onto other people, numbing out my pain with social media or alcohol or food or whatever it is. Just kind of being with myself is in the long term better than leaving myself. And I think therapy kind of helps give you some skills to do that when it feels really uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's really good. Just stay there. Don't leave. I need that.
But don't stay in the trauma though.
No. But stay with yourself.
Stay with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But
Stay
learning
with
to
yourself.
learn to let go of the trauma. There needs to be a little bit of a.
Oh, yes. I like that nuance.
Mhm.
Yes.
So where can our listeners find you and learn more about the work that you're doing? And if somebody wants to work with you, how can they contact?
So my website is my first name, last name, DanielleSethi.com. I actually have a bunch of like free resources on there. Like I said earlier, I have an attachment style quiz. I have a like couples communication assessment with some exercises to kind of help you with what your attachment style is, kind of how that might be showing up in your communication pattern. So some really cool stuff you can download there. And then there's also a contact form on there if someone was interested in working one-on-one together.
So
That's awesome.
Do you do everything virtually, or can people come to you as well?
Right now, I'm all virtual. That might change in the next few months, but for right now, I do everything over Zoom. So actually, anyone who lives anywhere in the state of Florida, I can see over Zoom.
Oh, that's great. Is that just because you're licensed in Florida, or is it like an insurance thing?
Marriage and family therapist in Florida.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know how
State
that
by
worked.
state.
I didn't know how that worked if you could do it like outside the state.
It's
I don't know.
very
That's interesting because like
annoyingly restrictive. Yeah.
that is interesting though, because if I'm calling you from, say, Michigan, I'm still a person that needs help and you're still a therapist that's licensed in the state where you reside. So you would think that it would be okay to treat me. I mean, problems
Yeah.
don't matter regardless. You know what I mean? Like just because
Yeah.
I cross state lines.
Right.
The reason is if someone was like in danger or suicidal and needed to have like support from the state, there's like different protocols and laws in different states for like high risk situations like that. So that's
that
why
makes
there's a little
sense.
bit of,
No, I get that now. Okay. That makes sense.
Do you also have anywhere people can follow you on social media? Are you present there?
I am. My handle, I guess, is my first name, last name, DanielleSethi.therapy. And I do a lot of I've been sharing a lot lately of, I watch a lot of television. So I've been doing a lot of reviews of dynamics I see on TV and kind of breaking down the communication or attachment patterns that are coming up. So you can kind of follow.
Oh, that's great.
That's fun.
Oh, I want to watch that.
Yeah. I knew that would tickle her.
Oh, yeah.
Bit. She likes that kind of stuff.
Is it like what kind of stuff do you watch that you talk about the dynamic?
I did. So 2 that I did recently. I just watched the new season of You on Netflix. You guys?
Oh, I haven't seen the new season. Cool. That's a good one for a therapist to come in and use their expertise.
Yes. So there's a scene where, if people aren't familiar with the main character, Joe is kind of like a little bit of a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
And
a little bit. Just a touch. Just a little tickle of serial killer in there.
I was looking for the word and then, yeah. But there's a scene where his son is really violent at school. And so his wife wants his son in therapy and he's really resistant. So I did a little thing about that. And then I also did one about, there's a new show on Netflix called The 4 Seasons.
I haven't seen that either.
It's my favorite thing I've watched in a while. The
Cool.
relationships are super interesting. But there's a scene where between partners in one couple where they're talking about why one of them lies. So kind of just making sense of the function of some behaviors and how just kind of understanding that helps us make it make sense so that we can do something different with the people that we love and communicate with.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll have to check that out.
I know.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yes.
All right. Thank you guys. So good to see you.
We're so grateful that you joined us today. If this story spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it too. You can find us at ican'tevenimagine.com or connect with us on Facebook at ican'tevenimagine-a podcast for moms or Instagram at ICEI_podcast.
And don't forget, there's purpose in your path, even if you can't see it yet.